So it says I'm sharing my screen. So do you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's two out of two. So basics in photography, and you can see right after the word in, I added the word digital. Because as I was getting moving on this, I thought, well, we're not doing film cameras. So I changed it and added the word digital in there. Oh, yeah, where am I going here? It's not letting me. There we go. All right, so we'll start with the camera. And I asked all of you to let me know what you're using. And you'll see that in a second. So the common types are obviously your cell phone, an action camera. Are you guys familiar with that? Like a GoPro type thing?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's the compact camera or point and shoot, as people call it. It's just a little pocket camera, basically. Bridge camera, micro four thirds, APS-C, which most people call a crop sensor, and full frame and medium format is above the full frame, so it's larger than full frame. Then we've got the two most common ones are the DSLR, which is the digital single lens reflex, versus the mirrorless, which is no lens. It's just got no mirrors. Let's get the lens, but no mirrors. Both are available in full frame or crop sensor. The DSLRs are older, usually heavier, and like I said, they have a mirrored system, and the mirrorless ones, for obvious reasons, don't. This is an example of the compact camera, and that's actually one that I had in my pocket today at the zoo. Um, it's very small. I'm still getting used to it. Compared to my mirrorless ones, it's still a little learning curve on there, but it does pretty well everything that my others will do, except it's got a lens that is attached to it. This is Dion's, I believe, the bridge.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
a bridge camera. Definitely got more zoom in it, but again, it's got a built-in lens, so it's not interchangeable. The next one is Olympus EM1. This one belongs to Maryland. It's a micro four thirds, so the sensor on the micro four thirds is a little bigger than the bridge camera and the compact camera, but you can see still got the same dials that we have on the other ones as well. DSLRs. This one is Monica's. It's a Canon 40D. These things, from what I remember, I used to own some Canon ones. Pretty sturdy unit. It's almost like a Tonka. This one here, I believe, Pat, that's yours. It's a Canon Rebel. What's that? A T4i?
That's the one.
Yeah. And again, you can still see we've got the dial on the top and multiple buttons on the back. Nikon, this one is trying to think. Jody, is that yours?
Z50.
I believe that's the Z50, yes.
It looks it.
Yeah. And again, look, we have the dial on the top and the buttons on the back. And Cheryl, it's got to be you, right?
Yep.
And again, you can see on the top. So this is a Canon mirrorless, Canon EOS R7. For the quiz at the end of this, EOS means electro-optical system. There is
Oh,
no,
thanks. I never knew what that meant. Thank you.
yeah, there is no quiz. I just happened to see it. So this is my camera, and so mine's a Fujifilm. It's a APS-C. By the way, we don't have any full frame people here tonight, so this is also APS-C. But if you notice my top dials there compared to that one or that one, Fuji is a little different. and I call I call the dial that's over here on the right the PASM dial. Canon. There we go. Let's go with this one. PASM, PASM. Canon, they don't use the same lingo as other people. So for their dial, they have P, which is program mode. Instead of having A for aperture, it's AV, which is I think aperture variance, and TV for time variance. So they don't call it shutter, it's time variance. And then M for manual. Where mine is almost like it's all manual. The aperture setting on my camera is actually on the lens. The dial on the right is my shutter speed. The dial on the left is the ISO setting. And on the far right is my exposure. I can increase or decrease it with that dial there. So a little more complex, I guess, but by the same token, if I want to just not do anything with it, see the little red A's, I can just slam it into those and that camera will take care of everything. So the sensors, the full frame, which is like I said, we don't have any full frame people here tonight. Their sensor is larger than the APS-C people. So what that's going to mean is it's going to get more pixels in that sensor than what the other ones do. So your cell phone you can see is way over on the far right, and then it kind of goes up from there. My Sony camera is the second from the right, so you can see it's a small sensor. It's a bit bigger than a cell phone. However, that doesn't mean it's going to take bad pictures. You don't need a lot of pixels to take a quality picture, and some of the billboards have less than what our cameras today have in them. So the PASM dial, as I called it, there we go. It's aperture value, and oh, there we go, and time value on the Canons. So the program mode is similar to auto, but you can basically it will set for you your aperture and your shutter speed. You set the ISO, and if you got a flash, it won't do that. The aperture priority is like it says, you decide what the aperture setting will be on your camera. The camera will do the rest. Shutter or the time value is shutter. So you control your shutter speed. The camera will do the rest. And in manual mode, you're on your own. You do all three. You do the ISO, the shutter, and the aperture all yourself. So there is no um, wrong way of doing this. Uh, in my opinion, you're taking these pictures for yourself primarily, and if you're happy with them, that's the most important thing. I have been doing photography since about 2007, I think it was. I was always managing or coaching my son's hockey team, and when he moved on to junior, I was kind of bored. I had nothing to do, so I kind of took upon photography and started to learn some of these things myself. So 2007 until today, and I use the program mode all day today. I didn't get out of that. Um, so it's for general day-to-day stuff, there's nothing wrong with it. Cameras today, especially, they're like little walking computers. You can set them and they will do a lot of the work for you. Aperture priority, it's useful when you need control over your depths of field. So if you're trying to blur your background, aperture priority is an advantage there. So if you're taking a portrait of somebody or of something where that's your subject and you want to blur something, you go to a faster aperture, which is a lower number, so like an f 1.4 or 1.82 or something like that. If you're working on something where you're in the dark, in a darker situation, you want to be able to adjust that aperture as well. Because also setting it to something like a 2 or a 2.8 would give you more light than a 16 or a 22 will. Shutter priority, it's ideal when you want to freeze or blur something in the scene. So if you're say you're shooting a hockey game, you don't want your players to be blurry. So what you would do is increase your shutter speed. The camera will take care of it, will detect what you're doing with the shutter speed, and it will set your ISO and your aperture based on what you're doing with your shutter speed. So sports is handy. Panning if you're doing. I was in Calgary about a week ago, and I was down at the camera store, and we went out on a photo walk with the camera store people, and so I was practicing because that I don't know if you've noticed, but that's one of Caps's um, what do you call it? The monthly assignment is panning. So I thought, oh, I'm going to
Mm.
practice this while I was down there. So basically, um, I was setting my shutter speed and I was following the vehicles as they go left to right, and the vehicle was in focus and everything else was out of focus. Vice versa, you can slow the shutter speed down if you want the vehicle to be blurry and your background to be in focus. It also works like with waterfalls. You want to have that white look to the waterfall, then you slow your shutter speed down. If you want to see the drops coming from the water, then you speed it up. Manual is great for slower types of photography. So you've got time to set and experiment with both the aperture and the shutter. And experiment is key too. If you've got time to do this, then you can practice with your taking some shots, and you'll be able to see on your screen, your LCD screen, whether or not they are blurry or too dark. You can make your adjustments right there. Manual's useful in tricky lighting conditions when you're dealing with something. If you're in the dark and somebody's moving, you're going to have to try and set some um, settings with your shutter and your aperture to make it work for you. I've had to buy a new lens too, which is expensive, right? Um, get into metering modes. Each of your cameras. Now, the unfortunate thing is, even though all of our cameras kind of had the same dial on the top and whatever, inside the guts of the camera, they're going to have things in there which I can't tell you where they are, so you'd have to consult your manual or a YouTube video. But they'll all have them in there somewhere in one of the menus. So your camera will have different light metering modes. And what these do is they decide that's where it's going to get the information from. So the first one is and it depends on what type of camera you have and what it calls it. Matrix, I believe, that's a Nikon term. There's evaluative and multi. So depending on whether you have Canon or Sony or Nikon, it's going to be called something different. Basically, it's taken into account the entire scene to decide how much light you're going to need. So as you can see in that box, that's the entire thing that's red. Center weighted. Um, it's a good default to have on as your center weighted. So it's going to measure the whole scene, but it's mainly going to focus on the middle. What's in the middle of the scene? The camera thinks that's where you're looking at what you want to see. So the center weighted will um, push itself towards that, but still take into account the whole thing. Um, Spot metering takes just a small part of the entire scene. So if you've got somebody that you're doing a portrait of and they're in front of a window, um, you don't want the camera to pick up the light from outside. You want to make sure that they are um, sharp and bright. So that's where spot would come in, and you'd use the spot metering on where you're focusing, and that would be the person and not the outside. Partial metering is something to use with both shadows and highlights. So that would help with the window as well. So you've got two options for that. Personally, I use the center weighted almost all of the time. You also have focus modes. Again, I don't know where they are on each camera, but they'll be in your menus. I think on Canons, if you look on your back screen, you probably have access to these on there.
Mhm.
Canon's AFS is their one shot. There's AFC, which Canon call AI Servo, and AFA, which is Canon AI Focus, and M, which is manual. So basically what that's telling you is, and my Fujis don't have an auto, they don't have the AFA. So the AFS is something you use if you're just shooting a stationary object. So that the S stands for stationary. Um, if you have, say, you're doing a conference and the speaker that you're taking the picture of is moving around, um, have your setting changed to C for continuous. So what that will do is when you half press your shutter button down, it will continue to focus on that person that's moving, as opposed to trying to find something that isn't moving, which is the AFS. Now you can leave it in AFC if you're taking just a picture of somebody stationary, but I have read some things that say that your focus won't be as sharp. And with my Fuji, I can't say that I've really noticed. So a lot of the time I leave it AFC and I don't I don't take it. Um, the M or MF is manual focus. So if you want to you've got an autofocus lens, say I don't know, I think the standard kit lens is like an 18 to 55. Um, you can you can use that lens as a manual focus lens by putting it into MF for the M, and then you just use the focus ring on the camera. Um, so again, it's I think I've explained the bottom part of that as well. Continuous. Oh, okay. So the shooting modes. You will also have this in your menu. So you'll see there's one, it could be a picture of a square or it could have an S. And it's a single shot. So you press your shutter button, it'll click once. You could also have a CL or a couple of squares as a little picture, which means continuous low. So you'll press your shutter button down and it will take multiple pictures, but it will be slow. Continuous high might be a picture of 3 or 4 little squares on your camera, or it might say CH, and it will do a faster. So you press your shutter and it will take multiple pictures, but it'll be faster than the CL. Clear as mud.
Mhm.
Um, so most cameras, and I'm not sure about the bridge camera, Dion, but most cameras will give you an option of shooting RAW versus JPEG. Um, so what's the pros and cons? RAW is the actual raw data file that you're getting all the data that the camera is picking up. It'll take all the detail. Um, they're large file sizes. You can print large prints. Um, your noise reduction will be better if you're editing the pictures. And it'll also help with your exposure setting as well. When you do a JPEG, which is the most common form of picture, your cell phones and everything will do that. Um, you don't need any software for processing. The camera's already deciding what you want or what it thinks you want the picture to look like. Um, everything is right out of the camera. You can shoot rapidly, more rapidly than if you're shooting in RAW on the continuous high, and the files are a lot smaller. So when you're shooting with your memory card, you can fit a lot more JPEGs on than you can with a RAW file. Um, Now the cons, um, you definitely need software on your computer to process RAW files. They don't look great straight out of the camera in most cases
Mhm.
because, like I said, the JPEG has already gone ahead and decided what it thinks you need, um, and it's thrown away the other data. So the RAW has got all the data. You process it yourself. Um, the JPEG, yeah, it says no, you want this, and it's throwing the rest away. So every time you edit a a JPEG on your computer, you'll lose a bit of the quality off there as well. Um, so there's some things you're limited when you're editing JPEGs, like the sharpening, the editing. Um, Again, and then the RAW, they're large files. So personally, and some cameras don't do this and some do it. I will do both the RAW plus the JPEG. So when we were in Maui back in January, um, I shot both. And then each night when we got back to our condo, um, I was able to look at the JPEGs on my iPad quite easily. And if my wife wanted them for her social media, she had the JPEGs right there. I kept the raw photos, brought them home, and edited on my computer. And so if I'm printing them for my own use to hang on a wall or enter them, say, in a CAPS competition, I will use the raw file and edit it myself instead of just the JPEG.
So, is there then a setting somewhere on the camera to set for it
Yes.
to do both? Okay, I'll have to find.
Again, it depends on what camera you have, but in the menu, in one of your first menus, you'll have the choice to set variable JPEG settings or RAW. Um, you can have a small JPEG. Some have medium, and some have what they call fine, which is the highest file of JPEG you can get. So you'll have three different sizes of JPEG you can do. And RAW, you might have two. You might have a smaller plus a larger one. But you can tell in your menu settings, like I said, it should be one of the first pages of your menus, um, what type you want to shoot, either JAW or sorry, RAW or JPEG or both.
And is that different than formatting the card?
Yes, because
Okay,
you're doing this in camera and you're telling the
okay.
camera what format you want to put on that card.
So if I change whatever is in there, that's not going to erase all my
No.
stuff off the card. Okay, good, good. Thank you.
What it would probably do if you shot everything on a card that's in your camera on JPEG, and then you decide you were going to shoot some raw ones, you know
Yeah,
how if you look at your memory card on the computer, you got a file folder in there with all your images in it.
yeah.
It would probably start a separate folder on that SD card with the raw files.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about lenses. Um, this is just some of the different types of lenses that we have access to. So a prime lens is a fixed focal length. They so if you see one that just says 35 millimeter, 50 millimeter, something like that on it, that's a prime because it will only do 35 or 50. Generally, these prime lenses are better glass than a zoom lens. Um, and they'll have larger apertures. So where your standard zoom lens, like your kit lens that came with your camera, again, I'll use 18 to 55 as an example. It might have an aperture, excuse me, of about f4, where you buy, we'll use Canon for an example, the cheap, they call it the Nifty 50. It's a 50 millimeter prime lens. It has an aperture of f1.8. So that gives you a few extra stops of light where that zoom lens couldn't give you that. So in a darker room, that 50 millimeter 1.8 is going to give you a lot better picture than something you could get out of that 18 to 55. Macro lens is for doing extreme close-ups. They tend to be a fixed focal length as well. You could do macro with pretty well every lens, and you can get an accessory called an extension tube. And what the extension tube does, and you can stack them up, you put them between the camera and the lens, and it will push your lens out, and you'll be able to create a macro of, say, flowers or bugs or anything like that. A fisheye lens, I have one, and the last time I used it was the 2019 Winter Games. So you can tell I use it a lot. I went up in the Centrium and got it gives you, like it says, a fisheye where it's a really wide view, but it's a contorted like a convex view of the scene. So not very popular. Then you've got your zoom lenses. You have an ultra wide, like a 10 to 18. And again, the lenses are going to vary by manufacturer. So Fuji, I don't know if they have a 10 to 18. I have a Sigma 10 to 18 third-party lens to fit my Fuji. But I'm not sure what other camera manufacturers will make. I know the next one, the wide angle, the 18 to 50, there's an 18 to 55, a 16 to 50, depending on the manufacturer. Also, in the case, and I can speak on the Fuji, of course, because I have it, they make a 18 to 55 and a 16 to 50. There's a quality difference. Oh, this tea is good. And so it'll give me a better aperture rating on the more expensive one. You have your standard zooms, which are 24 to 70, 24 to 105 in that range. And then the telephoto zoom, which could take you up to 600 millimeters. You can also get prime lenses that would go up to 400 millimeters as well, but you'd be pretty limited on what you could use it for compared to a zoom. Zooms are great for sports or air shows and things like that, or animals, wildlife, where you can't get too close without, spooking the bird or the dog or whatever you're shooting. Teleconverter is something you can add to certain lenses, and it will also boost your range. So, for example, 70 to 200, most manufacturers make a 2x teleconverter or a 1.4. So if you had the 2x teleconverter and you've got a 70 to 200 lens, you would essentially make that a 140 to 400 millimeter lens. However, it's going to take away some of your light. So your aperture setting, if your 70 to 200, say, is a f2.8 lens, it's probably gonna drop down to like an f4. It's going to give you the extra range, but if you're in a dark circumstance, you probably don't want to use it. Extension tubes, oh, there they are right there. I guess I jumped ahead. Extension tubes are, so if you can't, macro lenses are expensive. So extension tubes are a very cheap way of achieving the same look. And like I said, they're stackable. So Amazon sell cheap extension tubes, and they will sell a pack of 3, and they'll be fairly cheap. And then they'll help you to get into, like I said, bugs or whatever you're using the macro for. So other accessories to go along with your camera. The flash. We won't cover a flash here. That's a whole other issue. We've had people come into CAPS and talk about those. But you've got your pop-up flash, which is generally on top of your camera. They don't have a very big range to them, so you're limited to um, just in front of you, basically. You're also limited that the pop-up flash will only look forward. A speed light is a flash that you just mount on top of your hop shoe on your camera. You can even make it external by having flash triggers that you mount on your camera. It sends a signal to the flash, which could be over to the side, and send the flash. The flash will then light from the side onto your subject. A strobe is more powerful than a external flash and a lot more money. Flash triggers I just mentioned, so you can use multiple of them and have flashes trigger at different times. You can also use an LED light, which is a constant light, so you've got a source of a constant light keeping on your subject as well. And so that's just another object for lighting up. Personally, I've got a flash, and I can't tell you the last time I used it. I will tend to go wherever I can without using flash. And even though I'm just a hobbyist amateur photographer, I do some work for Child Advocacy Center is the one I do it pretty well all of their stuff. And so I guess you could say I'm an event photographer, and I'll cover their events. And I find that wherever their events are, I have enough light with one of my prime lenses that I can get in there. And actually, last week I was at the Gary Harris Center in their gym, and I was able to use my zoom lenses, which the minimum aperture would be an f2.8. So there's lots of light available in Gary Harris. A tripod. I haven't seen any wood ones, but the internet tells me they make wood ones. Aluminum, carbon fiber, the most common ones. There's different heads that you can get for your tripod. Most common for photographers would be the ball head. You can get a pan and tilt, which basically is a ball head with different settings on where you can twist it. And then a fluid head, which is for video. It's got the flat piece on the top and then a handle. You can use them for photography, but they're more common with videographers. Tripods, they're available in different heights, different weight capacities. So if you're buying a tripod, it's good to know what the weight capacity of a tripod is going to be. If you're going on Amazon and buying a cheap one that might hold 3 kilograms, there's a chance that if you got a zoom lens on your camera, it might drop that camera. If you get something 8 to 12 to 20 kilograms, then you know you're safe. They have different locking mechanisms. Some of the common ones have like a little snap, and each section will clasp open and closed, and some have a ring that will lock it that way. There's a large range in cost. You could go to McBain and get a tripod, I would guess maybe even up to $1,000. Or you can go on Amazon and get something for 20 if you wanted. I wouldn't necessarily recommend a $20 tripod after you've invested a lot of money in your camera. I have two tripods. I have my main one. They're both carbon fiber. So it's a fairly sturdy tripod that I use locally. But when we like to travel, and like I said, we like to go to Maui, I want something that's going to fit into our suitcase. So I have a smaller one as well. Camera straps is another consideration. I know when I had my first Canon, and it came with the standard Canon EOS neck strap, I didn't find them very comfortable. You can get a sling strap, which goes kind of from, say, your right shoulder down to your left side, or vice versa. or you can just get one for over your shoulder, or you can get a wrist strap. And there's also a variety of fastening options for those too. One that I use is a company called Peak Design. They use an anchor system, and so you can put two anchors, one on each side of your camera, like you would a strap, and then from the anchors you put whatever type of strap you want on, like a sling strap or a neck strap, or as I use, a wrist strap on there. I like the Peak Design stuff because the anchors also, you can buy an adapter to put on the bottom of your camera and put an anchor on that. So if you're changing how you're carrying your camera instantly, if you've got a neck strap, you can turn it into a sling strap by just taking one of the little anchors off and flipping to the other anchor. That's all you have to do. And the bottom piece also connects to a tripod. Other things in the camera strap range, there's holsters, there's quick release plates where you've got a plate on, say, your belt, and you can attach your camera to that. It locks in a certain way so the camera will not fall off your belt. And then it's got a quick release so that you can pull it off and take your pictures and put it back on again. Filters. Lots of filters you can get. A lot of people will get a UV filter. Most of the time, the UV filter is just a protective shield for your lens. That being said, it's pretty tough to scratch a lens on your camera. So I personally don't use them. But if we were going again, I'll use Maui as an example. I would consider putting one on if I'm down by the water and there's some spray, because it will spray on the UV. Then I can quickly take, if I don't have my cleaning cloth handy with me, I can take that filter off and take pictures elsewhere, while the UV filter is the only thing that's dirty. There's polarizing filters, which are just like wearing sunglasses. They eliminate the glare, they'll darken the skies, make them bluer, and they can be rotated. So as you turn the filter, it will change the intensity of what the polarization will be as well. Neutral density filters are handy when it's in daytime. You want to freeze the spray on a waterfall. You can add a neutral density filter, and they're available in multiple stops. So there'll be a different range. You can get an ND2, 4, 6, whatever, and each one will have, it will take away some of that light, so you can slow down the waterfall. Or if you want your clouds to be a dreamy cloud just going across the sky, you can use an ND filter and slow down your shutter speed to be able to use those. The ND filters also come in what they call a variable ND, neutral density filter, where half of it will be whatever density the filter is, and the other half clear. So you can get maybe just the sky to have the filter on, and where the land, if you're doing a landscape picture, will stay normal. Graduated ND filter is one filter that'll have 10 different settings or 8 different settings, depending on the filter. And it will allow you to turn it, and then you can darken or lighten as you need. Filters aren't cheap. So what I've done with mine is I look at what the size of my lens is, and it'll tell you that right on the lens. It'll tell you if it's a 72 millimeter diameter or whatever. And I buy for the one that I use most in the large size. So 72, I think, is what I use the most for my zoom lenses. And then you can get step up or step down rings. So I can use that 72 millimeter neutral density filter or polarizing filter, and I can use it on a lens that's maybe only a 50 millimeter diameter. So you don't have to buy, you know, in a polarizing filter, you don't have to buy 5. You could buy 1 and have the step up rings instead. Memory cards, there's lots. For the most part, I think Monica's camera takes the CF card, and hers is the only one. Everybody else is taking the SD series. There's a whole bunch of numbers on your memory cards, as you may notice. And again, I'll be sending this out so you can get all this data. There's too much to keep in your head here, but the numbers on the card mean something. So in the top right corner, you can see we've got the SanDisk Extreme Pro, or SanDisk, that's the make. 128 gigabytes is the size, and you can kind of see in the top, what would be top left side, you can see a little lock. There's a little button there, and you can push that up or down, and by pushing it down, it will lock the SD card. So if you're out on a shoot somewhere, you've taken these pictures, you don't want to lose them, you don't want to accidentally erase it or anything, you can press that little lock, and it won't let you do anything with that card. It also tells you below the words Extreme Pro that it's 300 megabytes per second. So what that will do is while you're taking your pictures in a continuous high, that is the speed that it will buffer or store those pictures on the SD card. You will get buffering if you go over that. So if you can get a higher speed, the better off you are. Of course, that comes at a higher cost, right? You've got other classes on there, which you can see I've got down on that chart below. So that one up there has got a 10 in a circle, which means it's 10 megabits per second is the speed class. Then it's got a 3, so that means it's the 30 megabits per second for the UHS speed class. And then it's got a video speed class 2 somewhere on there. V90 is what that one says. So that one's good for 90 megabits per second on the video. Because if you have a slow SD card and you're shooting video, it's just going to stutter, and you're not going to, it'll be buffering, and you won't be able to get the video. So those are just some things to look for when you're buying an SD card. And oh yeah, the 128 gig, that will put that as an SDXC card. As you can see in the center at the top there. SD cards are 2 gigabytes and under, SDHC up to 32, SDXC, which that one is, up to 2 terabytes. If you've got nothing but money and you want to spend a lot of money, get the SDUC, I guess, but I don't see any point in that, really. I have 256 is my biggest memory card I have, and yeah, I don't definitely don't fill it. All right, so that's your camera and your lenses and some accessories. So now let's get out of auto. Did I just go past? I did. So can have a look at that. I'm just going to shut my door while you guys look at that. Keep the dog out. So the exposure, and again, our goal tonight is just to give you some options to get out of auto. If you're comfortable in that, this stuff is good to know, and it's good to experiment with. But there's nothing wrong with, like I said, today I shot just the program mode. I let the camera do the work today. I was too busy having fun with the grandkids to stand there and set shutter speeds and stuff. So the aperture, the wider the aperture, which is the lower the f-stop number, the brighter the picture will be. Narrower, of course, is the opposite. So if you've got a lens that has a range from f1.8 up until f22. F1.8 is going to let in a ton of light, and f22 it won't, it'll be darker. Shutter speed, the faster the shutter speed, the darker the image. So again, if I'm at a hockey game and I want to get those players sharp focused, I'm going to have to increase my shutter speed, which will make it darker. So then I have to make sure that the aperture is going to be at a number that's suitable for that. Now, whether I let the camera make that decision or I do it myself, that's up to me at that particular time. What I will usually do is if I'm at a hockey rink, I'm taking that picture, I'm going to increase my shutter speed probably I'll start at about 500 because it's experimentation. I'll take the picture and I'll see what the camera determined my aperture should be. If it looks dark, maybe I have to move into manual mode and change the aperture to a lower number, or back off on my shutter speed. ISO works by increasing the light information. So let's say, for sake of argument, that f2.8 is the best I can do for my aperture, and anything under 500 500th of a second for the shutter speed is still blurring my images. So now I have to think about the ISO. So what I would do is I'd increase it, but that comes at a cost. So the higher the ISO number that I'm using, it's going to let more light in, but it's also going to bring in grain with it as well, and your picture's going to lose some of the information that's in there, and it'll well, like I said, bring in some grain. So you kind of have to be careful that you're not overdoing it as well. Today's modern cameras can maybe do 6800, maybe more, and still be really good. In the older cameras, you wouldn't want to go over maybe 3200. Mine, I think, will automatically, I've got it set to when I'm in auto mode, that it will decide for itself up to 6400, but I could have gone to 12.8, and I won't, because it will bring grain in if I went to crop that picture. But they are amazing today compared to the old days. You may have heard of the aperture triangle before, and it's the three things we've just talked about, which, oh, stop it. My watch keeps trying to tell me things. So this is, it will be on part of the handout that you get. So the aperture side, what it's showing you there at f1.4, that's wide open. Where at f16, you can see the pinhole in the center. That's how much light it's letting in. So it's either going to be wide open on one end of the spectrum and dark on the other. And then the shutter speed, again, if they've got a picture of somebody running, the slower the shutter, the blurrier it will be, and but it will be brighter, and then it'll be darker, but more in focus on the other end of the spectrum. And then on the bottom, the ISO, you can see how grain is creeping in on this one. You can already see it at 400, but reality, I would say maybe you could go 1600 to 3200 before you start to see that. Each camera will be different, so it's an experimentation thing. So the photography stops, each aperture setting is a stop of light. So you've got, on this example on the left, 10 stops of light, and it's telling you what your aperture settings are and shutter speed. It can get confusing, but once you get used to knowing where you're at, especially in the aperture world, if you're in a room that's dark but you got, say, people eating dinner, they're not moving too fast, it's a wedding or whatever, or a party, you can think, okay, well, I need to let in more light, so I'll just change my aperture and go down to a 2.8. You're not really going to worry too much about the shutter speed, because they are not running around the table to eat, they're sitting down at the table to eat. So a good example for that would be to put it in aperture priority and let the camera decide for the rest. In photography, so on the one on the left there, you've got your 10 stops, and each of those settings showing there is a different stop of light. But there's also half stops and third stops. So depending on your lens, you could have a variety of choices of how many different aperture settings you're going to have. And for example, 2.8 might be your fastest zoom lens you're going to get. I think I have a 1.2 and a couple of 1.4s in prime lenses. So they're definitely, you can see how many stops brighter they are than the 2.8. In whole stops, the 1.4 is 2 whole stops better. So that's 2 whole stops of light. But there's also some fractions of stops in there that, and I don't know if my lenses have all those on them, but that's just for information on there for you that you can get a half a stop or a third of a stop. You don't have to stop down the entire one. So program mode. So now we're getting to what I called the PASM dial, and call it that because it had the PASM on there. So I put, is it really so bad? Because it's not. I use it when I do stuff for when I'm doing the events. Pat, who's on the call, him and I went to volunteer on Friday at the Children's Festival downtown. And I said to Pat, I'm just going to put mine in program mode the whole day, let the camera do the work. And it worked out fine. There was really, for me, there's always editing to do because I have a crooked head. You might have noticed that. I tend to have to try and straighten my pictures every time I take them because even though my camera, when I look through it, has a level, I still tend to shoot crooked. But in program mode, um, you basically set the ISO, which a lot of people will leave between 100 and 400, maybe up to 800, and then the camera will take care of your shutter and aperture. And if, in like the case with Pat and I, we were outside, so ISO of 100 is plenty fine, and the camera did the rest of the work for us. These are a couple of samples of pictures. Actually, the one on the right is from that day. So these were just in program mode. The camera did the work. It got the focus of those people in there. So whether they're good pictures or not is a different story, but the camera did what I wanted it to do. Aperture priority, which is the A on the dial, or AV if you're a Canon user. We've actually already gone through this. The aperture, brighter, the lower the number, or faster is a term for it. And slower or darker is the higher number. And it'll also work with your depth of field, which is a blurred background. So like I said, if you're taking a portrait picture, if Cheryl and I go out and there's a garden somewhere and I'm taking a picture of Cheryl and I don't want to see maybe somebody's garbage can that's by the flowers and stuff, we can adjust that aperture and try and blur out what we can so it's out of focus and they can't see. If we want to make a point if somebody's dumped their garbage can out by these nice flowers, we can go with a higher number and then people will say, look at that horrible garbage can there. So the aperture does affect your light as well as your depth of field. Here's a couple of samples of what I took. My grandson's not too wild about that picture. but you can see, in the one on the left, I took the picture of him and blurred out the background by using, it was also dark, so that was probably at like a 1.4 or something, so that I could get enough light and also blur the background. On picture on the right, um, went for uh, a lower number to get the trees so the trees weren't sharp, but the couple in the picture were sharp. Shutter priority. Um, so basically it's how long the shutter is open for on your camera. Um, the more you leave your shutter open, the more light is going to get on your sensor. And obviously the other way, if you have your shutter open for only a thousandth of a second, it's not going to let much light in. Of course, the faster the shutter speed, um, the more focus your subject will be in if they're moving. Um, if you're using a slow shutter speed, um, and you're holding the camera, you might come across camera shake. Some cameras, not all of them, no. Some cameras have IBIS or in-body image stabilization, and some cameras don't. Some manufacturers have lenses that have image stabilization built into the lens, and some lenses don't have that. So it varies between cameras and lenses where your stabilization will be, and you can get maybe up to 6 or 7 stops of stabilization, which will help the camera shake. If you're using a really slow speed, you might want to consider a tripod as well, or a monopod. Um, an example would be I have a 150 to 600 millimeter zoom lens, which is heavy. So if I carry it on my just on my camera, just on my wrist strap, something would have to be moving really fast for me to get a in focus picture. But if I want to say get a picture of a bird that's a distance away from me, but it's just sitting on a branch or something, I'd be better off to use that monopod, because when I raise that lens up, it's got some weight to it, and I'll likely start shaking, even just a slight vibration, and it won't be in focus. This is a couple of cases where I used shutter priority. The one on the left was, hey, surprise, my favorite place, Maui. There was the guy there that I wanted to try and get him in focus, and by doing that, it also had the spray of the water. If I'd have slowed down that shutter speed, you wouldn't see those particles of water. It would just be blurry. And by the same token, he probably would have been blurry as well. On the far right is a picture of Ram Falls. Um, on that one, I did the opposite. So on the one on the left, the shutter speed is faster to freeze that motion, and on the one on the right, I had a slow shutter speed to let that through, which gives you that I don't know, what did you call that water? Silky, whatever, cloudy, but you know what I mean. I'm So in manual mode, now you have full control over your camera settings. Um, Once your camera's set to manual, you can adjust any of those settings, and it does come in handy. Um, Chances are you're not going to use it all the time. Um, Most photographers probably either use aperture or shutter priority, or maybe even the program mode. But it's if you can understand it and practice with it, you will find it handy. Um, if you can, like, I wouldn't say that I've mastered using manual mode. If you've got time to do things, yeah. You think ahead. Sometimes in the moment you don't have time to do all these settings. If you're on a tripod and you're doing landscape, or you've got some wildlife that are grazing or something, sure, you got lots of time. But if something's moving or you're in a hurry to get a picture, um, I would stick to shutter or aperture. Here's a couple of examples where I did use manual. Picture on the left. I got 4 people in there, but you notice they're looking different ways. They're talking, they're laughing. If I'd have done it the other way, on the far right of that picture, Lanny McDonald is kind of not even fully in focus. It's a tough shot to get using those other settings because I have multiple subjects that I'm trying to focus on and get them in the picture. So I had to use manual for that to get enough light and to shoot at a fast enough shutter speed to freeze those people. On the right, the musician, he's playing his guitar, and I didn't want his guitar or his hands blurry. So again, I'm in a dark area, so I had to make sure I had enough light, but also have a fast enough shutter to freeze his hand and the guitar. Make sense? Good. White balance. So you can set your white balance in your camera, and white balance is determined by a color temperature. So the higher your color temperature, and it's the same with lighting in your home too, the higher the color temperature, the whiter or the cooler the color will be. You want it warmer, the lower the number. So it's measured in degrees Kelvin. So fluorescent lights, for example, you want a warm white fluorescent tube. The color temperature was 2700. You want a cool white. I know this because I sold them. I sold them to Pat, actually. And a cool white was 4,000, and then they had some of the other ones that were 5 to 6,000 that were better for people that had headaches in the winter or whatever, because they were a bit cooler. And that's the same with the white balance on your camera. Without a word of a lie, I never take mine off automatic white balance. It's on there permanently. White balance is one of the easiest things if you do edit your pictures on a computer. One of the easiest things to change. I set mine in auto. I've been happy with it. It's correct 99% of the time. If I do want to make an image look a little warmer than it does in auto, pretty well every editing program in the world has an adjustment slide or knob for white balance. So not much to really talk about as far as that, but again, I do have a handout that shows you all those numbers. Histogram, oh boy. I hate the histogram. Another one of the things where I can't say I've mastered. Basically, you're looking through your viewfinder, and or you're looking, if you shoot using the screen on the back of your camera. When you're pressing the buttons and you get to view on the back of the camera all the different options on there, you'll probably come across the histogram at some point. It looks like a bunch of mountains. And if your histogram is jammed up to the far left, that means that everything's too dark. Now, if it's jammed up on the far right, it's too bright. It's too many whites in there. So what you're shooting for is to not have anything in the darkest blacks and not have anything in the darkest whites. Everybody tells you how super duper important the histogram is. Oh yeah, on the chart there, mid page, underexposed if it's all on the right, so it's too dark. And it's overexposed if it's all on the far right. So they even give an example there of a bride where she's too dark in the underexposed when it's on the far left, and she's way overexposed, and there's just no details left on the one on the far right. So some people say you should always expose to the right. But that's the people that do a lot of editing as well. It's easier in post editing to take that picture where there's a lot of stuff on the right and pull it back by using your sliders and editing programs. Don't be scared of the histogram. Know that it's there. The only thing I do with it is and you can see this too in the camera. If you're looking at a modern camera and on the back of your screen, you're seeing what the camera's seeing, you already know it's too dark. So I don't need the histogram to tell me that, yeah, I can't see anything. But um, yeah, it's in a handout. Composition. This is why I joined CAPS. I could take pictures. I could work the knobs. I could read a book and figure out what the camera buttons and things are supposed to do. But composition, is your picture telling a story? Is it are the people able to find what you're wanting to take the picture of? So I put this picture in there because I took it when I was on the camera walk with the camera store in Calgary, and it's a horrible picture. And I saw the guy in the purple coat. I thought, oh, that's different. So I just quickly took a picture before he came chasing after me. And as you know, you've seen me, I can't run anywhere near as fast as that guy. So it's busy. It's got nothing to lead you into that guy. He's kind of dark in the shadows. There's a truck behind him, some ugly posts, and it's just not a good composition. There's, but I wanted to put it on there because, like it says there, it's chaotic. I took it, yeah, I'll own it, but what am I going to do with that? Nothing. It's probably already in the delete bin after I showed you guys now. So different, and these are tips. Because there's rules. People say there's rules. Rules are made to be broken, right? So I would say these are tips, not even the second one says rule of thirds. Um, take these as tips. So viewpoint. So instead of just standing at your regular height with the camera to your eye, think about what your picture would look like if you were at a different point of view. If you were down on the ground, or if you were up high. I did one of the events I covered last year. I held my camera up above my head. I used my little tilty screen on the back and shot from above everybody. Just gives a different viewpoint, which can alter the way your picture looks, and it can look good. Rule of thirds, basically it's saying don't center your subject. Your camera, probably on your in your menu, you might have a frame where you can do the rule of thirds in there, and it will give you 9, like a little X's and O's graph there. And so it's saying divide your picture into thirds and put one of your subject, your main subject, on one of those lines and not in the center. Leading lines is another one where you have your subject in your picture, but you have other objects that are in that picture that lead you to the main subject, so that when the viewer looks at the picture, those lines guide them right to what it is you're actually wanting them to see. Curves, you could be outside, it could be a creek or river or something, or could be a landscape where maybe there's some forest where there's some curvature in the trees. Oh, what did I do there? There we go. So curves can help guide the viewer to the subject in your picture. Minimalism is essentially taking a picture of something where the remainder of your screen is, I guess, for uh, lack of a better term, blank, or there's not much to it. So you have your subject, say a dandelion, and the rest is just grass or something like that.
Or snowmobile track up a hill.
A snowmobile track up a hill in an S curve. Um, Patterns is something that repeats itself and draws the viewer in, uh, similar to what lines would do. Scale is if you take a picture of something um, that's big, like a mountain, and you're not really telling the whole story. You should look for something else to put in your composition that somebody can relate to that shows the vast size of it. Trying to think of an example. There's Sparwood, I think it is in BC, as you're going through Crow's Nest Pass. They have this great big mining truck parked along the side of the highway, and it's just huge. But if you took a picture of it by itself, you'd say, "Oh, well, that's a nice dump truck." But you put a person standing with that, you'll see actually how big that thing is. Um, Depth, um, having something in the foreground and um, showing that as well as something in the background, people will tend to look at it and it will add to your composition instead of just having a picture of I don't know, a tree in a lake, have something, some rocks or something on the edge. Um, Natural framing. Um, Example would be if you've got a bunch of trees and you see in a clearing, you can see a deer or something. You can use the trees to frame around and not just shoot the deer, but have something that's framing around it, like I said, trees. So yeah, like I said, break the rules. They're they're just guides. They're not etched in stone. But as you saw in my example of my horrible composition, if I'd have used some of these ideas, I probably could have done a lot better. I was actually, if I hadn't gone to the zoo today, I was gonna use Photoshop. I was gonna AI a whole bunch of that stuff out of there and just have Mr. Purple guy on a beach or something, but didn't have time. So I've got some samples. Not a bunch because we're already over what I thought we'd be. So scale. So this, I took that in April. Hey, it's a mountain. It's got snowing. Yeah. Okay, there's a different view of that mountain. So you can see now I've brought a road in. People recognize a road, and you can kind of see from the first picture to the second picture how now that mountain looks, oh yeah, that's a big mountain. But I took a third one, which I prefer. And so my composition changed, as you can see, from picture one to picture two to picture three, because I experimented and I added something to the picture that wasn't in number one. Number one is one of those kind of like the purple jacket guy. It's a mountain. See ya. Um, Minimalism. That was in one of the caps walks last year, 3 Mile Bend. There's a leaf on the sidewalk. And the other people that went on the caps walk were all kayaking at 3 Mile Bend. My body wasn't built for a kayak, so I walked. And two of my favorite pictures were this one and one of somebody didn't clean up their dog poop. Patterns and shapes. What I was shooting was the stairs on the other side, and then I backed it off a bit and got all these curves from the wall, as well as all the triangular shapes, which I didn't, to be honest, notice all these bricks or tiles on those walls curving like that until I saw the triangles and I saw the stairs, and I thought, oh, it'd be cool to shoot through there. But the patterns and shapes definitely can draw you in. Curves. There's the S curve in a road. Abraham Lake. And the clouds kind of help frame it as well. This surprise, my favorite place. Actually, that is no longer. That's Lahaina that got burnt down. I was crossing the street and I knew I was safe because the vehicles were quite a ways away. So I bent down close to the lines and took that picture. And now that Lahaina is gone, that's one of my favorite pictures now. So outing. These are just some samples. I've been there before, obviously. So the pink dot there is Kin Canyon. In case you don't know where Kin Canyon is, it's just off of 32nd Street. And there's some condos on the right. Well, I guess it depends on which side you're coming to, whether it's right or left. On the north side of 32nd Street, there's some condos there. And Kin Canyon Park is just on the right-hand side. There's a parking lot there, so we can meet there. And then we can wander north towards that yellow dot at the top of the map. Two ways we can go. The little brown curvy lines are just like a gravel trail. The black and white is paved. It's the Trans-Canada Trail. That's why they got it black and red. There's some nice trees. There's a creek. This was the pictures I took here, probably not last year, year before, maybe September. I just kind of wandered through. I went off the trail, got some logs, and I like the shopping carts. There's shopping carts everywhere in this town. So, are you guys all available to go Sunday morning at 9?
Yeah, I am.
We've got some CAPS members have offered to come along and help. And then, like I said, we can do this again in say July and August. We'll find somewhere else to go, use the same group of us to keep practicing this. And up to you guys.
Is that this Sunday?
Yes.
I won't be able to.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm usually not available Sunday mornings.
Okay. Does Saturday work for everybody? I've got some time Saturday morning. We could do Saturday at 9.
I can't either. It's super busy.
Okay.
Yeah, Saturday wouldn't work for me either.
Okay. Well, let's keep Sunday for this one, and let's plan for another one in July. And Monica, your question. I see you got a question in the chat there. Raw plus L and raw plus M and raw plus S. Those are just the different file sizes. So a raw plus L is going to take up more space on your memory card than raw plus M. And so what it's going to do is shoot raw plus a JPEG, and the L means it's a large JPEG, a medium JPEG, and a small JPEG. The S raw is the same as a raw file. It's going to keep all of the data, but it's a smaller physical size than the actual raw file. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so then let's if you can make it, great, and if you can't, that's okay. We'll do another one. What about editing? Did you guys want me to do something on basic editing for computer? Is that not something?
Is
Okay.
that like Lightroom and stuff, or
Yeah, Lightroom, or pretty well every computer comes with some form of a photo editing program. There's a lot of free ones too. They all use either sliders or knobs or buttons or something to adjust the image. So we'll just take the basic ones that are in every program and make some adjustments. So it wouldn't
Sounds
be
good.
very long.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be interested too.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that in a week or two or whatever. And then, yeah, like I said, I can send out an email and hopefully maybe in July everybody can make it and we can get out and practice a bit more.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So, like I said, I've
Okay.
recorded this tonight, so I will send you guys a copy of that. I'll send you guys a copy of the presentation. I've got a booklet that is about the basics of photography, and I've also got some cheat sheets that have like the aperture, the shutter, and all those different things on there that if you want to refer to. And then when we go out, don't be afraid to ask questions, and we can figure things out. Look at your camera there. The unfortunate thing is, you know, between Canon and Nikon and with mine, Fuji, they don't all have the same terminology and the way their menus are set up are a little different. So if you get stuck on something like that, we can figure it out together. I did have Canon for a number of years, so I've helped Pat a little bit with his because I had something similar, but it took my brain a little while to get used to looking at that Canon camera again. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks, Mark.
appreciate it.
yeah. And I'll get this stuff to you probably tomorrow.
All right,
Okay.
sounds good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good night.
Thanks,
So-
Mark.
Okay.
So Ken Canyon at 9 o'clock on
9 o'clock
Sunday?
Sunday morning, we'll be there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll see you there then, Mark.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.